Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mission Employable podcast. My name is Ryan West. I am your host. We have a great show for you today. We're actually in studio with our guests, so thank you for coming in studio. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello. Thank you for checking us out. We have a pretty good growing collection of YouTube videos out there where we're doing these podcasts. So I feel like we're officially in this century with some of the technology we're doing. So we're very excited about that. And today's show is a continuation of our business engagement initiative that we have rolled out here at Iowa Workforce Development and through our Iowa Works offices and communities. And we're very excited about it. There's a lot that's going into this, and that's why we're bringing it to this episode again, because we're very excited about the ways that we can engage with businesses. On the microphone with us today to discuss the schematics of how we are accomplishing all this, even though she's only been here I don't know if you've been here a month yet.
Not quite a month.
Right, here you go. Is the new Deputy Administrator of the Business Engagement Division, Kathy Anderson. Kathy has a work background tailored to helping us engage with Iowa businesses. Kathy was also the leading factor in getting the Home Base Iowa initiative stood up. I like bringing that up because that's a program here, and we used to hear your name all the time when you were doing that. When she was with IEDA, excited to have you on. Thank you for making time. Welcome to the Mission Employable podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're
looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're pumped to have you on. So I think what we should do is, what we always try to do is kind of a high-level overview and just kind of kick off, in this case, what your background is. You know, we like to bring folks in sometimes and we put them out there and you're feeling your way around it. And I know you've been with the state before, so I think that helps, though. But you do have a unique background. Talk to us about what that has kind of entailed, if you don't mind, and then why you wanted to come here to Iowa Workforce Development.
You bet. Yeah. Well, first, I'll start it off with, I didn't think I'd be back in state government. So this is new to me, too. But basically, my background, the best way to describe my background is probably very nonlinear. I don't think anybody goes to school thinking that's the path.
Right.
But I have worked for private sector companies, so both Gateway way back in the day.
Sure.
In the Siouxland area.
Okay.
And then Craig Tool more recently.
Yep.
Worked in state government for about 10 years with Iowa Economic Development Authority. And then private sector, more association private sector, chamber work for 2 years at the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce, and then 5 years at ABI, the Association of Business and Industry. Yep. So kind of hit every area.
For sure. But I mean, lends perfect to what we're doing because we're trying to really engage with those areas.
Absolutely. And that's actually what interested me about this role is just, experiencing almost 15 years between ABI and IEDA. And my primary role there was to really advocate on behalf of business and serve businesses and connect them to each other and services that would be helpful to them.
Right.
So with that background, and then also the last couple of years at Craig Tool, you see firsthand what companies are experiencing. You see, okay, there's, since the beginning of time, there's been competition and coming up with new products and development. But in addition to that, lately, they've also been hit by supply chain issues, inflation, tariffs, you name it. Companies are facing everything right now. And so when I heard there was an opportunity to really help, at least on the workforce front, it seemed like a pretty exciting opportunity, and it's work that matters to companies, and I think it matters to our state.
Well, I totally agree, and we're excited to have you. And I mean, I forgot about the ABI thing too, as well. I mean, all of those entities we're trying to help. We work with them already in certain capacities, certainly with ABI. I'm curious on the chamber. That's one of the things I'd love to bring more to this podcast as well, how important the chambers are in those communities.
Absolutely. The economic development professionals and the chambers across the state, they matter. They matter a lot.
And I think that, harnessing all that power and going in the same direction is so vital to this. When you were with the chamber, do you get the sense when you were on that side that employers were just inundated with all of these different avenues and then like your experience at Craig, or is it just kind of depend on the business? This is totally off the cuff, by the way. Sorry. I'm just kind of curious on what your thoughts were there.
So I think, first of all, my experience at Craig Tool is fantastic. Yeah. I started just a couple of months before the pandemic hit. So
perfect time.
Right. I don't know how much was, how much of what I saw Craig experiencing there was normal to their previous, say 10 years.
Makes sense.
But definitely supply chain issues, demand issues.
Yeah.
It was just incredible.
Right.
And then you add in inflation and tariffs, and I really felt like, I felt like CEOs are just dealing with a ton right now.
Right.
And workforce has been a longer issue than that, really.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about that all the time. The pandemic just kind of ripped the Band-Aid off on it.
Right. And so I think that's where kind of my heart is just a little bit more there, because I worked with the HR team, so I saw kind of all the hard work that they were doing, all the different creative ways that they were reaching out to potential employees, and just sharing the company culture. They were working really hard, and it's still sometimes hard to get employees. And so you see firsthand what CEOs are facing, you see what HR teams are facing, and if there's a way that I can be helpful in this role and help connect some dots and maybe bring some strategy together, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. And I should say, we feel that pain as well. We have several vacancies out there as well. So I agreed. It's an interesting time. Okay, talk to us about how the new role, the newly revamped role for this business engagement consultant that we have placed around the state are going to work. We were calling those our business marketing specialists. We've changed the name to the business engagement consultant. We've kind of revamped what they're doing. They're more out and about. I know this has been a process as well, and I know, Kathy, you're fresh into almost a month here. But what do you think? Talk to us about how that's going to really help businesses.
Sure, I will. And that has been something that I didn't really know what to expect. The first several weeks, both my colleague Tim Goodwin and I have been going out to each of the local offices just to see how they're set up, to meet the folks who are working, in the field and most closely with both the companies and job seekers. And it's been fantastic. They are incredible people. I've really, really loved each of the conversations that I've had with our business engagement consultants. And as I've described it to them, and as we've really talked about it, I think what's key is, they're focused on business. So businesses will be their primary role. But the next part of it is just that consultant piece. Their role will be to listen. First, to listen. What is the company experiencing? What stage of growth is that? What in the business life cycle? Where are they? What kinds of programs and services, both within Iowa Workforce Development and statewide programs, but also what other nonprofit solutions might be out there? What other local solutions? What other kind of consortiums are out there that they can bring to the table for companies?
For sure.
And so that's the part of it, is truly that consultant type of role of listening and really providing that value add. I think that's, it's really just a change of a name, but I think it's more than that. It's really reminding them every day of what their role is and how we can help businesses. Yeah,
for sure. And I think that consultant name is more familiar maybe sometimes with the businesses as well. And we should say, the business marketing specialist before the name change, we're working with businesses, but this change allows, and specifically working under you and then through Tim, really just 100% gets them engaged with businesses.
Right.
Where other times in the office, and we had to help do some other things in those IowaWorks offices. We have 15 or 16 of those folks around or 18? Do you know off the top of your head on that?
Yeah, so there's a mix. There's business engagement consultants. There are also leavers who help more on the veteran side. And then most of those business engagement consultants have a small team as well that are helping with things like, job fairs and those types of things. So there's a pretty great group out there in the field, and they've been incredible to work with already.
Right.
I've
For
really
sure.
enjoyed it.
And if you want more information on how to get connected, obviously you can find the local IowaWorks office next to you, but you can also check out Iowa Workforce Development. We have a page where you can schedule. We'll talk about that here towards the end.
You bet.
Because I know you were very helpful on that as well. So you've kind of touched on this one. So big shout out to our business engagement consultants out there. It's
Absolutely.
the moral of the story in there. And getting them connected with more employers is what we want our businesses. So we want to get you hooked up with those folks, and that's what Kathy's helping us do. Okay, you kind of touched on this one a little bit, but since I'm redundant and like to ask the same thing 4 or 5 times, let's go ahead and go with this one. You have worked in both those private and public sectors over the last few years, and for some of us, I've been here for 13. You get institutionalized a little bit. We're in here, and so what do you think businesses need when it comes to workforce, and how can we solve them with those needs? That may sound like a really just kind of that's a lot there. We probably could do one podcast just on that. But what are your just basic thoughts on that? We know, the inflation and tariffs and things like that. Do you think that businesses need help in looking at different talent pools, or what are your thoughts there?
Sure.
Here you go. I'm just pass this over to you. Solve it all first. Sorry.
And incredible idea. I do think that is worthy alone of an entire podcast, just talking about that. But I would say I'd start with just where I always start. Let's listen. Yeah. Let's find out, because it can be very individual per companies, and it can be individual per industries. So for instance, I think, a technology company might be looking for and might have different challenges than, say, a manufacturing company or even a state agency.
Right.
But I think I would start with, say, manufacturing. It's just probably a little closer to home and near and dear to my heart.
Sure.
I think in some cases, just more people. Yeah. More people in general.
Bodies, it's a numbers game.
But in addition to that, I think sometimes it can be, if as a manufacturing company becomes more and more technology driven, and say they have cobots or, certain spaces where it's a little more technology driven, automated, if you will, in those cases, they're going to need people with increasing technical skills. Yeah. And a lot of times that can be developed in-house, and other times that might be, okay, we need to find someone with expertise in this area. Yeah. So that's why I say it's just so dependent on the business, because in some cases it's more of internal training that's needed to upskill folks into these new roles. Yep. In other cases, it's sheer number of people. And in other cases, like a technology company or a really specific type of consumer product engineering, that could look very different, and those talent pools could be more challenging to find.
Yeah, well said. And that upskilling is something we've talked about. We were talking about that a lot before the pandemic, and I'm curious. We had, I don't know if this episode's out as we're talking now, but it will be with Robert Frederick, and I encourage everybody to listen to that one from the University of Northern Iowa. He was talking about just how, they're seeing more employers in some of their studies reaching out to other states and allowing folks to work remotely from where they are for them, or vice versa. And I know we want to bring people to the state. We want Iowa jobs, totally. But I wonder if that's like the next, and maybe it's already going on, and we just don't see it or hear about it enough. But that's a thing, right?
It's a thing. And if COVID changed anything, I think it's the ability and the comfort with team members working remotely or in some types of hybrid situations, or maybe it's they have a particular team member may have an elderly parent in another location, and they're there for just a short time to help navigate some health issues, and then they come back to where they're typically located. I think really everything's on the table for companies in terms of how do we reimagine the new way we work.
I totally agree, and I we have a hybrid schedule here as well, and as you know, and I do think, I just don't think that's been defined enough. I think that's evolving still. I kind of think that we thought when we come back from the pandemic it would go back to the way it was, and that just hasn't been the case on a lot of fronts. But I just think it's evolving as employers. I do think there is something out there that will happen with the business around remote and stuff like that hasn't been defined yet, but it will change workforce on some of it. Even in those areas where traditionally you have to come into the office, I think they're going to be forced to figure some of that stuff out.
Well, I think that could be really interesting. Yeah. But there are simply some roles, a lot of roles in healthcare, a lot of roles in manufacturing where you really just need the person near the work they're doing. Yeah. And so, I think maybe there could be, there are creative solutions that folks have been looking at for a while. It's, job sharing. Sure. Maybe it's
that's a good point.
Mother's hours combined with, seniors in high school and combine the two of them. And, I think there are just a lot of creative solutions that companies they have been looking at and will continue to look at.
I totally agree. Those are good points. Okay, so great information. Last one here. Let's just go ahead and totally 100% put you on the spot. What is your number one goal over the next 12 months? Because you've had almost 4 weeks to formulate what that number one goal is. I felt I needed to ask you that. Or what are your thoughts there around that? It's really not a fair question for you yet, probably. But, you know, you do have this unique background. And so I get just with the chamber, I can't believe I forgot about when you were talking with ABI and then in manufacturing and ID. And now here, what do you think there? What would you like to see?
Well, I have a couple thoughts on that. One, I'll start with just longer term. Whatever we can do to make workforce programs more accessible, more flexible,
good answer.
more intuitive, and honestly, you know, with more emphasis on the ones that work.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's more emphasis, perhaps it's more funding.
Yeah.
But those programs that are really working for employers, you know, let's direct more folks there.
Yeah, good point.
There may be some that aren't working as well, and I think this may. I am only 3 weeks in, but it may be shocking that if programs aren't working, then maybe, you know, let's take a look at them through another lens.
For sure. Great
but
point.
Longer term, I really want to listen. So the first 100 days, we haven't really talked much about this first 100 days of visits, but over the first 100 days, our business engagement consultants and leadership here at Iowa Workforce Development are making a real concerted effort to engage with businesses, especially those who may not be aware of the services that Iowa Workforce Development or Iowa Works in the Field have to offer.
Yep.
So that's important, and we're going to use a lot of what we learn from those visits to inform what we do over the next day. So that's first 100 days. I would say, you know, by 6 months, that becomes a little bit more clear on how we make our programs more accessible, more flexible, and more usable for our employers.
Yeah, great stuff. And we're trying to tweak our websites to make it simpler as well, and all of those things. Great information. Okay, so folks want to get in touch. They have questions. They want to reach out for business engagement consulting. Where do we want to send them on that?
I would say to reach out to their local Iowa Works office. Each office has a business engagement consultant. If they don't have an existing relationship with that office, I think this is a perfect time to establish that and just learn more about the programs that are available to employers.
Yeah, and you can schedule a consultant time still if you go to IowaWorkforceDevelopment.gov, right? In the top browser there.
Especially if you're a company that hasn't worked with IowaWorks regionally before. That's a great place because your local consultant then will be available and actually at a time that the business prefers. So we have a couple of options that the company can put in, what times work for them, what days, and then that local person will reach out at that time. Yeah,
for sure. Great stuff. By the way, you had mentioned lever when we were. Thank you for bringing up one acronym in this podcast. We like to do that at least once. It's crazy. It's all we do. But that lever is the same type of thing. They're just working more on the veteran side of things.
Absolutely.
And I think we have 2 of those in the state right now. Four. Geez, 4 now. Gosh. Yeah, great stuff. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to Kathy Anderson, who is our new Deputy Administrator for Business Engagement. We're super excited to have her for obvious reasons. Great stuff. Thank you for making time.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Absolutely.